Hello, friends. I just learned something cool about the garden today and snow, and I learned it when it fortuitously happened to be snowing. Hi, this is Aubrey from Crybaby Seminole Homestead, and I was doing a quick search trying to figure out when is the best time for me to plant um, like radishes and peas. And when I was searching, I came across something from Old Farmer's Almanac that talked about snow and how snow has been used for a really long time as a way to fertilize your garden. Yes, as fertilizer. I'm not joking. So, what I read was, and I'll go ahead and post that little image right here, is that ammonia is in snow. So, as the snow is falling, apparently it picks up ammonia, and when it falls onto the soil, if you can trap it, and the article doesn't go into the detail, but if you can trap it, then it won't dissipate back as a gas. So what people would do in the past is they would like dig it in. And that's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to dig some of the snow in so that I can trap some of that ammonia. So I looked up the chemical formula for ammonia, and it's NH3, which means every molecule of ammonia has one nitrogen atom and 3 hydrogen atoms. And so that nitrogen is what we want to trap. And of course, gases can be trapped as, gas, or they can also be solids or liquid. So if we can trap it by getting some of the snow, like maybe into one of my containers with some soil that's already there, and I can put another layer of soil on top of it, then it'll trap it from dissipating back as a gas. Better do it pretty fast because it's warm enough to melt, and my husband's throwing snowballs at me. Turd. What are you doing, Jose? Containers that I'm going to plant in, that I just throw in like leaves, and it's already collecting some snow, but I want to trap it, right? So I want to put another layer on top to keep the ammonia and the nitrogen from getting back out into the air. So I need to combine some containers, I think. I see you. What are you doing? Oh my gosh. You are so mischievous. Some of the snow into a pot. Okay, so that's, it's cold out here. It's cold out here. And the boys are having a snowball fight. Oh, okay. Ooh, my hands are cold. I should be wearing gloves or something. Okay, so I'm gonna pour this in. Trying to balance. This is not streamlined. This is not edited. Okay, I got some of the snow that was in that container, and I'm going to flip these leaves over and trap in the nitrogen. Oh, my hands are so cold. Okay, let's get some more of the leaves. Okay, and yeah, there we go. And some more leaves. Hey, sweetheart. Can you help me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
I'll hold the camera for you.
what you could do for me is I'm trying to get snow. You want to help me get some snow?
My hands are gonna freeze to death.
Me too. So I pulled up the portion of the article that's specifically about this whole phenomenon where you can actually use snow as fertilizer. They actually nickname it the poor man's fertilizer. And they say that basically, as the snow is falling down, it's absorbing ammonia in the air. After the snow falls, the sun's going to warm it up and melt it, and that releases the nitrogen back into the soil. If it's not kept covered up or something, then it will dissipate into the air again more readily and more quickly. So you want to cover it up. To do that, the colonial farmers actually plowed the snow underneath. I never heard this before, so I wanted to share this with you. Have you ever heard about this whole, idea of plowing in snow? Um, I this is new to me. So, and that rarely happens because I've been so like obsessed with gardening for decades. So whenever I find something new, I just get so excited. So I think it's really cool. And I guess this comes from French peasants that used to believe that a spring snowfall was as beneficial as using fertilizer. And so, of course, I was actually looking up something about peas at the time that I came across this information. And peas are legumes, which also fix nitrogen in the soil. But I wanted to point out this article and kind of show you. I'm going to actually pop over in a second to the website itself and show you the article because I just think it's so beneficial. And if you don't already um, subscribe to the Old Farmer's Almanac, if you don't already have it in hand, I always buy it from Old Tractor Supply Company. I said Old Tractor Supply Company. But that's where I usually pick it up. They generally keep this year's Old Farmer's Almanac near the checkout area. So I buy it every year and I really do enjoy reading over the information. Now, the website is going to contain a lot more information. Um, and I don't know if the website and the physical copy carry all the same information or not, but I definitely would use both resources for sure. All right, so this is actually the article where I got that little screenshot from, and I apologize for the little ads and stuff you see here. This is a free resource, so there are some ads. But if you look here, it says like when to plant peas. That's what I was looking up. And then as I was going through it, I was like trying to figure out. So I always have the best pea harvest when I plant really early. So generally, I would plant in the very beginning of April, sometimes late March, and I was trying to see like how much can I kind of push the envelope on it. So, I'm going to be planting some peas probably this month, actually, maybe in a week or two. Um, so if um, basically I have enough seeds where I think it's worth the risk of planting a couple different batches of peas in early, mid, late February, early, mid, late March, and April, because we love them so much that I think it's worth if I go a little bit too early, maybe losing some. Um, and so I was going through this article about the peas, and that's where I came across this toilet ad. Just kidding. Where I came across this article, Poor Man's Fertilizer. And as I scroll down through here, um, it talks about how falling snow absorbs ammonia from the air, breaking it down as the sun melts the snow. And it's a small amount, okay? So I did research and I did look at some other resources where they say there's like one person who's like a professor something or other, and they said it's just such a minuscule amount, it's not worth it. But there are a lot of people online. If you search poor man's fertilizer or snow, you're going to find a lot of resources. And I trust Old Farmer's Almanac for the most part. So this is where I got the information. I'm going to link the full article in the description box in case it interests you. And I thought, well, while we're on here, let's talk about the benefits of snow. So, and if you don't want to get all those annoying pop-ups, if you click the print button. So when I was on here, I found that if I want to not see all the ads, if you click the print button, you don't actually have to print it, but then you can actually scroll through without having to see all the pop-ups. So on this article here, and if you search like ammonia or if you're specifically looking for the information, this is what you're going to find. You're not going to find this one. So because this article here is about planting peas, but that's where I found the information that I thought was so interesting. But when I searched for it specifically for the information, this is what came up. And it's pretty nice too because it does talk about the nitrogen in the first paragraph here, but doesn't give you all that history of it, right? So it does talk about the science of it, how it's going to be really basically what they're describing here is the nitrogen cycle. So Nitrogen is an element that occurs as all the different phases of matter, solid, liquid, and gas. That's why when you buy your 555, 10, 10, 10, 5, 10, 10 fertilizers, that has nitrogen in it, right? That's as a solid, but they also have liquid nitrogen. Um, and also it occurs in the air. So like when the pea plant is fixing nitrogen, it's actually taking nitrogen out of the air, and it's actually putting it down into its roots. And there are bacteria that like little nodules on the roots that if they are detached from the plant or if the plant dies, it feeds the soil, and the other plants around it are going to benefit from that nitrogen boost. So this is the whole, long story short, nitrogen cycle, just like the water cycle, carbon cycle, all that good stuff. So the snow is actually delivering a little bit of nitrogen, but the I thought was interesting about the peasants, right? Because it back here on this part, it talks specifically about what the peasants would do. What's crazy to me is that they would even realize it, right? But it talked about how they would actually plow that spring snowfall under. That is just too smart. Like I don't know how they would have figured that out, but they must have just like trial and error. They did it once or something, and then it seemed to have a benefit, and then then people figure out the science of it later. But one thing too I thought was good to know is that you can get rid of all those ads, because that's one of the things that irritate me about the site is are all the ads. But if you click on the print and then button, then you can actually just see. So it talks about how snow actually insulates the plant. So if you don't have good mulch, um, then the snow actually helps to keep the plants a little bit warmer. I know that seems kind of ironic because snow is cold, right? But it does provide insulation. It's Snow is better for a garden than an actual freeze. So we are expecting a freeze pretty soon. If you have a snow before a freeze and the snow sticks, that's very helpful. But this is a really nice article here. It just very briefly talks about it. And if you search for it yourself, this is what you're going to find. So I'm going to link both of these articles there for you. While we're on this topic, I thought we'd talk about hardiness zones. And like I can see, I live in Washington State, in Western Washington. So if I look here, then I can see here, look, I'm kind of 8A, kind of 8B. So I tend to go with 8A because that's colder, and I just want to make sure that my plants don't die. So we do sometimes get under 10 degrees Fahrenheit. Um, but I don't know. I'm kind of like in a little, I guess I'm in a tiny little bit of a colder pocket compared to some other areas in my city. Um, so it could be 8A, could be 8B, kind of on the borderline between the two of them. If you put in your zip code here, I'm going to link this to the description as well. Put in your zip code and it will tell you exactly. Because if you look at any state, there's like regions, right? So there's little micro, and even in those regions, there's like these little micro areas where you have your own little climates, your microclimates. So even if it says like you're 8A, 8B, 4A, whatever, you might just be a tiny smidgen off from them. And that will take some experience in your own zone. Now, I was also mapping out today what I'm going to plant and when. So I actually pulled out my cell phone calendar and started typing in like little blocks of like time of like the first week of this month I'm going to plant this, and or from seeds, like the first week of um uh like May, I'm going to start planting things outside. So you need to know your frost date to be able to do that. So if you type in your zip code, and it will tell you your frost date. And so once you do that, you can just Google, how many days between your first, like the day that you find is your first frost date and your last frost date. And then I go through and say, okay, this date is 2 weeks before my last frost. This week is my 12 weeks from my first frost date. So right now I'm about, I think I wrote down 14 weeks from my last frost. So I have 14 weeks from my last frost, and I have about 150 days or so, plus or minus, of frost-free days. So my growing season is 150 days. So if I want to grow anything that's longer than that, I'm going to start them indoors. So I'm going to be starting peppers this week. And I'll do a separate video on that. But I'm going to start with peppers because even though I could start with tomatoes and peppers and eggplants and a bunch and ground cherries, I'm going to start with peppers because in my experience, those are the ones that have just taken the longest for me. And when I've started tomatoes really, really early, I end up with a big tangled mess because I usually grow indeterminates and they'll just grow really rapidly and it just kind of outgrows their space. So this week I'm going to start peppers, and I'm actually donating some pepper seeds to the school as a PBIS choice. So they have like positive behavior interventions, and so the kids can choose to grow some of the free seeds I got from Baker Creek, because when you spend like $10, they send you a free seed packet. And one year I got like so many of the same type of peppers. So this week I'm going to have some of those on the PBIS store. Kids are going to come in, they can plant their seed in a little K cup. I have a grow mat, heat mat there. And so they're going to get their peppers started, and so am I. So I'll be starting some peppers this week. And then the next 2 weeks, I'm going to be starting my tomatoes. So now I'm basing that off of my frost dates. And so these resources, like I said, I'm going to pop them into the description so everybody has them. You probably know about these, some of these are at least already. But what I'm really like excited about is really mapping out and having it handy. I'm putting it on my phone, on my calendar, where I'm actually mapping out like 14 weeks from frost date. I'm planting, and they say 12 weeks, 8 to 12 weeks for peppers, but I'm starting really early just because I know how long they take. So for this week and next week, I'm doing my peppers. Right after that, I'm doing tomatoes, eggplants, ground cherries. And then I've even mapped out like 4 to 6 weeks before my last frost, I'm going to be starting winter squash and gourds like the shark fin melon, or it's also called the fig leaf gourd. I'm going to start off things like my Tahitian melon squash. And those two ideas came from Robbie and Gary, either Gardening Simple or Gardening Easy, and then also Garden Like a Viking for the Tahitian melon squash. Last week, I found at Walmart they had some uh, squash that they call Sasquash, and that is going to be very similar to the Tahitian melon squash. So if you can't find that one, you can find the Sasquash seeds at Walmart, and it's pretty cheap. So that's what I would recommend if you can't find the other ones. But I'm going to start those out 4 to 6 weeks before my last frost, and then maybe 3 to 4 weeks, like the week later, I would start my zucchinis and cucumbers. And of course, you can still plant your squash and your cucumbers. You can direct seed them, which sometimes can be better because you don't want them to get root bound. If you have your cucumbers and squash and gourds, if they are not getting potted up appropriately, they can get stunted. So then like they look like they're growing really great. They have a couple of weeks too long in a pot, and then you plant them out and then they're like, I guess I'm done. And they don't really size up for me. So that's one thing I'm going to be keeping an eye on this year, is to pot things up bigger as they need it. So it's not like one and done. And yeah, so I'm going to start them off probably in like, for squash, probably in like 3-inch pots, about 3 inch or 3 or 4 inches. Now with the peppers, I'm going to start those and like just like those little packs. So I bought on Temu, like I think they're like a little 6 or 8 packs, and I've had them. I bought them last year, so I don't know what the pricing is now, but they have like a little grow lid on the top, so it keeps in the moisture. Um, I am not going to use a heat mat with my squash. I don't feel like it's necessary. I grew squash for many years without before I ever had grow mats. But the grow mats were really the lifesaver when it came to peppers and tomatoes. And those really warm season crops that like warm soil, things that like cold soil, it just seems super unnecessary, and sometimes they do worse. So that's just my personal experience with it. So I wanted to show you those resources here, and just talk about the benefits of snow, and besides the absolute beautiful beauty of it, absolutely love it. So hopefully you found some of these resources worthwhile. It's snowing in your area and you got some soil, it might be smart to just take a layer of soil and put it on top of the snow. That's what I'm doing, to just take a layer of soil or whatever you have, leaf mold, anything, and put it on top of the snow so that the nitrogen is in the soil for your plants for the spring. So cold. I'm not prepared for this weather. So I'm gonna go inside now and have a cup of coffee. Hopefully you had a good time learning something new, as did I. Like, I didn't know about snow being a way of fertilizing. The only thing is when it, liquefies and then it gets warmer, it's gonna evaporate. So if you can dig it in, like the old timers used to do, that's the way to keep the nitrogen in your soil. I would not use ammonia in my soil, but a natural way of getting ammonia from snow seems very natural to me. So that's what I'm doing. Be good, be sweet, grow a garden if you want to eat, and I'll see you next time.